Hello, I'm Jessica Rivera with your latest Newsbreak. In Wisconsin, 30-year-old Christopher Anderson is wanted on first-degree intentional homicide in the murder of his ex-girlfriend, 26-year-old Hannah Miller. Anderson's SUV was found abandoned outside Minneapolis, and his alleged accomplice has been arrested. In New Jersey, a crowd of about 100 people showed up at 45-year-old Edward Matthews' home Monday to protest after Matthews was caught on video yelling racial slurs at a neighbor. And in Nashville, Tennessee, over the holiday weekend, a shocking dash cam video shows a person throwing a lit firework into a stopped car at a driver at an intersection. As the driver tossed the firework out, he did end up getting burned. And that's your latest Newsbreak. Now back to America's Voice Live.
Thank you, Jessica. Well, it was a bloody and deadly Independence Day weekend. As we mentioned just a few moments ago, at least 150 people killed in over 500 shootings across the country. In New York alone, shootings have spiked almost 40% from this time last year.
That's right, and it's causing some New Yorkers to rethink bail reform policies that allow prisoners back on the street who can't afford release while they wait on trial. Joining our panel today to discuss is the former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Human Rights Commission and former mayor of Cincinnati, Ohio, Ken Blackwell, Real America's Voice contributor Dr. Tom Borelli, and Republican strategist and former Indiana GOP financier Rory McShane. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Mr. Mayor, I'll start with you. You ran a big city. Cincinnati's a big city in America. We didn't have these problems when you were mayor. It just seems that over the last several years, places like Chicago, New York, it has just spiraled out of control, sir. And there's got to be better answers than what we're seeing of defund the police and treat the police terribly and so on and so forth. If you were in charge of Cincinnati today, what would be the answer?
As was the case in the late 70s, early 80s when I was mayor, I basically said to the citizens of Cincinnati, we have a choice, chaos or community. One of the things that I know is that capital seeks the path of least resistance and greatest opportunity. And so if you choose to let your city become a killing field as opposed to a field of dreams, capital will flee your city and you will see a downward spiral with an increase in joblessness. And I think the left has chosen chaos and disruption, and with their embrace of defunding to police, they have created cities under Democrat leadership in particular that are becoming killing fields, and what they're going to see is a radical and rapid further decline of the quality of life in those cities, and it's going to impact minority communities and low-income communities most severely, as we just witnessed this past weekend.
Rory, I want to go off of what Ken just said about these cities. They're getting more and more dangerous, but Democrat rhetoric, it's meaningful to suburban moms who hear, hey, we're going to control guns, we're going to take care of these folks because they don't deserve to be in jail. They're not living it every day. Are Democrats tricking the suburban mom into voting for them, and suburban moms are not aware that ultimately these policies are hurting more young people?
Well, that's exactly right. And what you see is that the suburban demographic doesn't really get on board and doesn't really become aware of the true reality of these policies until it affects them directly. I live here in Austin, Texas. Our company has an office here, and for a long time, these Austin suburbanites voted incredibly liberal until most recently at ballot referendum, the city passed a public camping ban because large groups of homeless people were overwhelming intersections and threatening traffic and stuff like that. And it wasn't until that problem was on the doorstep of these suburban families that they were willing to say, defund the police doesn't work. This was, of course, after the city of Austin cut their police budget by 25%.
Tom, let me ask you this. I'm looking at the numbers through this morning. In Chicago so far this year, just so far this month, in 6 days, 146 shot, 25 killed. It's a war zone. In fact, that's exactly how one of the aldermen described it yesterday. It's a war zone in Chicago. It's been under Democrat rule for as long as I've been alive. And yet somehow people keep voting for them. Well, at least the Democrats keep winning. You can figure out how we get there. But how do you turn this around, Tom? I mean, you've got these cities that are openly failing, whether it's Baltimore or Chicago. Pick your place that it's a shooting gallery, and yet the Democrats continue to win every cycle. How can that be?
Well, Steve, when I think about this whole issue, I'm obviously outraged at the number of deaths and number of shootings, and it's totally senseless. It is a war zone. But at this point, I'm really looking at the media. The media has the ability to report on this, which, hey, they're reporting numbers, but I don't see the media pressing the mayor of Chicago, Lightfoot, every day as she walks into her office. I think that's the groundswell you need. The media, the major media, needs to be much more aggressive in pursuing these politicians who are having these policies that are leading to these tragic deaths of too many Americans. Once the media focuses on that, public opinion will change, and then public opinion will then allow voters to change because their opinions will be, moved in that direction. That's the missing link that I see. It's the lack of the outrage of the mainstream media, the liberal media. They will gladly report on all the deaths, but they do not press the elected officials on why every moment of every day.
The media has great power. And I want to see what you have to say about this next subject, because we've had the media weigh in on this quite a bit. While the war against guns is heating up, the war overseas could be coming to a close soon. President Biden says he wants all U.S. troops out of Afghanistan by the upcoming anniversary of the September 11th attack. Now the U.S. intelligence community, they're warning that the Afghan government can't hold back the Taliban. We're hearing a lot of people in the news say, oh, this is a crisis, we're going to end up with the Taliban running free over there. Ken, I want to ask you, at this point, after 20 years, what can we do to support the Afghan government if they're not ready to take the Taliban over and kick the Taliban out of the country? Then why is the media saying, oh, we really still have to be a part of this endless war?
Well, look, I am of the belief that you have a clarity of purpose, and I don't think that our purpose for being in Afghanistan is solely to help the people of Afghanistan. I think part of the reason that we're in Afghanistan is that we want to keep the war and the fighting there, as opposed to having it spread. But you have to have clarity of mission, and you have to have the will and determination to fight. What Biden is doing now is retreating. If in fact you're going to pull out, tell me what you're going to do to keep the fighting contained, keep the Taliban contained in a very narrow space. If you can't do that, believe me, they will exploit and export their terror across the globe and join in league with other terrorists to reap disorder in the West and in our country, because we have rapidly become a nation without borders.
Rory, in fairness, President Donald Trump also wanted to leave Afghanistan. One of the things that has come to light, though, that is a new fact in this mix of leaving Afghanistan, it's not just the Taliban. It's the Belt and Road Initiative from China, Beijing bringing in $62 billion because they want to take over the infrastructure development in Afghanistan like they've done in so many countries around the world. The Belt and Road Initiative will pump money in all over to different countries, and then basically all of those countries owe Beijing. No different in Afghanistan. What are your thoughts?
Sure. This is a an obvious attempt by China to dominate the region, right? And when you dominate that region, it's been a region of strategic importance throughout history. The British Empire tried to conquer it. The USSR tried to conquer it. When you dominate that region, you have geographic strategic access to many important areas. And as the U.S. retreats from its role as a world leader and as a world superpower, that gives China a very clear and obvious entryway. And this is, I would argue, a long series of the Biden administration kowtowing to China. And quite honestly, I think we had a pretty good indicator that that was going to happen before the election.
Dr. Borrelli, I want to go back to something that Ken said. He said, we are a country without borders right now. We need to keep the Taliban in a very small space. It's something that not many people are talking about. People keep talking about people pouring across the border that need help. But there are a lot of people, bad guys, pouring across the border as well. And if we know we are giving the Taliban more control, more power, ultimately that means more money. Is this a danger at our southern border?
Well, clearly, there's a danger at a southern border without what's going on in Afghanistan. How many hundreds of thousands have already been detained there over the last few months since President Biden took over and reversed all of those successful policies that former President Trump had. But I think overall, the American people and the leaders here, we need to pick our fights. Certainly, China is the most aggressive threat I think we're facing. And from my perspective, they could have Afghanistan. Nobody else has had a great time there. I hope they have a miserable time there as well. But we need to pick our fights globally, and I was very disappointed with the G7 because Biden should have been leading the G7 against the Belts and Roads initiatives of China, which is hitting countries that have actually natural resources and countries that are much closer to us. And he clearly failed with holding China responsible for the Wuhan virus. There, I said it. So what we need here in the United States is leadership. We can't be everywhere. We can't do everything. I don't know how many trillions now we're in debt. I lost count. I can't over the last few days. So we need to pick our fights strategically and be smart about it. And I haven't seen a lot of smart things out of Washington of late.
Gentlemen, thank you. Ken Blackwell, Dr. Tom Borrelli, Rory McShane, thank you all for being here. Another fascinating conversation of world importance. And for all of you watching, don't go anywhere. New York prosecutors are going after the Trump Organization for tax fraud. And when we come back, we'll have Julio Gonzalez on the program to explain what that means for Team Trump. This is America's Voice Live.